Good afternoon, everyone. It's Hanifa Menon from hearthealthbrainhealth.com, encouraging healthy grieving and mindful actions. Today, I thought I would continue the thought or direction that I was moving in with the last video, which was all about the things that lead to accumulation, right? And what I finished on was this idea of competition, comparison, and fear usually being part of this process of accumulation. And again, I want to focus today on our minds and what we accumulate in our minds, and then also talk about what has led to this. So for this particular video, I thought I'd start with the idea of comparison. And comparison has been part of our lives for a long time, hasn't it? So how did it begin? Do you ever think about that? Do you ever contemplate this idea of how did this idea of comparison begin? Now, in this time, it would probably be very easy for any of us to think back and think, wow, if you had a sibling, you might have heard either they should be more like you or you should be more like them. And it could be in any regard, right? So it could be in school, it could be in sports, it could be in how tidy your room is or is not, right? So there was this comparison between siblings, which often happens. And then the mind starts doing this automatically too, right? Where it's kind of like, well, mommy's like this and daddy's like this, right? So we started doing that ourselves that way too, because we compare. And again, it's been fed to us around us, and it's not just this life. Remember that I do believe that we are all spiritual beings first and foremost, and then we've taken some residence in human forms, right? So that sort of idea. So the spirituality that we're all coming from, or is part of each of us, has already experienced comparison, not just now, not just since you were born, but through lifetimes of experience that are in the ethers, that are in the energy around us, that are part of us, right? So I wanted to start with this first quotation, which has an unknown author, but I thought it was perfect. So it says, "The fastest way to kill something special is to compare it with something else." The fastest way to kill something special is to compare it with something else. So I come back to the example of kids comparing each other, right? So even kids themselves will compare themselves to another child and say, well, that one, rides a bike better. Another time, as adults, it's like, that one's better in computers. And today that's very useful for people, right? And constantly there's this comparison happening, and yet it kills something that's very special, because as soon as we use a mind that is comparing, it sets up its own limitations. It starts thinking of something as better than or lesser than. So if they feel better than another person's computer skills, for example, if I know how to do things on the computer that another person doesn't know, I feel pretty special, right? And I compare myself to make sure I'm gauging myself that, yeah, I'm doing pretty good, because a lot of people don't know this. And you know that this is the sort of thinking that leads to ego development and growth, right? So I thought I'd come and share this other quotation with you, because this is probably a nice expansion of the thoughts that I'm trying to share with you, which again, these thoughts have been part of human consciousness forever. And I'd love you to hear this quotation, which is by Rajneesh. It says, "Jealousy is comparison, and we have been taught to compare. We have been conditioned to compare, always compare. Somebody else has a better house. Somebody else has a more beautiful body. Somebody else has more money. Somebody else has more charismatic personality. Compare. Go on comparing yourself with everybody else you pass by, and great jealousy will be the outcome. It is the byproduct of the conditioning for comparison." And this is the thing, right? The more we compare, it's inevitable. When it becomes a habit, comparing, inevitably we get to a space of jealousy. And this space of jealousy is not a comfortable experience for anyone. So if anyone has been in that space of, oh, they have this and I don't have that, that's that space of jealousy, right? So of course there's the other side, is pride, right? That I've got this and they don't have that, right? So that's the other, and neither is a very good spot to be in. And you would think, well, doesn't pride feel good? It doesn't, because as we all know, things change in life. So someone who's doing really great today might not be doing very great tomorrow. So even if we come back to the computer analogy, people who have been trained very well on computers 10 years ago are feeling a bit of a change in our environment, because now new minds are arising and thinking differently to use computer skills in a very different way than what 10 years ago was used, right? This is how quickly our technology is changing. It's a lot of things that change in our material world, and it can bring up jealousy if we're not mindfully watching our thoughts of what am I looking at. If you look at something and just think, wow, that's beautiful, that's lovely, that's fantastic, they've got that, and I'm going to try to see if I can do something like that, right? And it's something like that because no one of us can repeat what another person is doing. That is what they're doing. Now we see this all the time too, right? You see someone doing something great and someone tries to match it, and sometimes someone beats it, right? So we can look at running and we can see sports, and we can see that when someone runs, the fastest speed last year will probably be beat this year by another athlete. And this year, it could be the same athlete that beats that previous speed from last year. Yet there will come a time where someone else gets that. And that's, again, this material world. And from that does naturally arise this feeling of jealousy. So as people move beyond a place where we might be, we might get into a space of jealousy unless we're consciously aware. And if you look at one of my videos is about sympathetic joy, and maybe I'll put a link to that under this video too. But practice sympathetic joy too. When you see someone achieving something that's just great, just think of it's just great. And if it inspires you to create your own great, fantastic. Try not to pull them down by saying, oh, well, someone did that last year, right? Because some people do that. And sometimes people will just say, well, so what? So yeah, I'm doing stuff too. And there's that comparison, right? And rather than just being joyful in that moment because of some experience for another or even ourselves, it's just to be in that space, right? Just be satisfied and content and hopefully joyful with the experience. And then finally, I thought I'd finish with this, which I'm sure you've heard something like this before. This also does not have an author attached to it, but you might have heard this before. And it says, I'm too busy working on my own grass to notice if yours is greener. I'm too busy working on my own grass to notice if yours is greener. Now, this is such a meaningful thought, because if we are truly too busy working on our own grass to avoid comparison that leads to jealousy, fantastic. If we are truly in that space of, I'm working on this, right? That's so beautiful. And this doesn't mean that we completely neglect if someone is suffering beside us who doesn't have grass, and perhaps we want to help them have a nicer lawn or something, right? Or maybe they like looking at your grass and they want to share that experience of you taking care of your grass, right? All of that, that's shared energy, and that's a beautiful space. But more times than not, people are comparing, oh, that's so much better, that's so not good, right? So all of those judgments come right before that space of falling, and that falling is into a space of jealousy when we're looking at comparison. So today, for 5 minutes after this video, I'd love for you to catch yourself in any moment of awareness of your own jealousies. And if you have been less mindful, you might notice that you have fallen into this pattern in some aspect of your life. And I'd love for you to find one area where either you already know you are, or you might be noticing a tendency for consistent comparisons. It could be that you want a bigger house. It could be that you want a smaller house. It could be that you want a different car. It could be that you want a different city. It could be that you want a different job. Anything. When you're doing comparisons, you are, as we said, killing something special. So today, bring life to something special. I wish that for you and for all of us. I wish you a fabulous day ahead, and I hope you remember, transform your mind and transform your life. Have a great day, everyone.